Chapter 4 of Tractate Eruvin continues the discussions of Chapter 3 of the Techum boundary of 2,000 cubits from your residence that you can't leave on Shabbos. The first Mishnah discusses, what if somebody forcibly pulls you out of the Techum, or an evil spirit possesses you, which is an expression that just generally refers to a disorder of your power of perception, and you leave. If you are returned, it's fine, nothing changes. If they put you in a new city or in a corral or similar, some say you can move around in your enclosure, some say you can't move more than 4 cubits. There was an instance when some sages had their Techum established at a port and their ship left on Shabbos while they were on it. Some moved around the whole ship, others stayed within 4 cubits to be safe. There was another incident when some sages were on a ship as Shabbos fell, but they were allowed to disembark from the ship onto the port, as when Shabbos fell, the port was close enough to be within their Techum boundary as it was visible from the ship. The Gemara brings a teaching that there are 3 things that cause a person to violate his own will and the will of his creator: people who worship idols, evil spirits, and poverty. We bring this to say that we should pray for mercy due to these. It also says that there are 3 types of people who are spared from Gehenna as they suffer in this world: the poor, people with intestinal disorders, and someone being pursued by creditors. Some add a bad wife, others don't, as they say you could just divorce her. Others say this is a case where you can't do that, where the marriage contract requires a reimbursement that you can't afford, or they have kids and you can't divorce her. This was brought to teach us to accept such tribulations with love of God. In addition, it says that there are 3 types of sufferers who can just die at any time. People who have stomach disorders, you could die due to post-childbirth complication, and hydrokin, which is some sort of a disease. This is necessary to teach us to prepare shrouds for such people. Okay, back to Techum boundaries. Some interpret a teaching from the Mishnah that if you were removed from your Techum against your will and you walk back in, you can't walk more than 4 cubits. And if you leave willingly and somebody else, say a non-Jewish individual, brings you back inside the Techum, you also still can't use it. It also says, if you're removed from a Techum and need to use the restroom, you can move around to find a private location because of dignity superseding this whole thing. Some say you can look around to find a restroom and use this opportunity to permissibly re-enter your Techum. Okay, but how do these laws apply to other things? If fruits were removed from the Techum and brought back in, they can be carried around in the Techum because the removal in return is not with their will. Some say that if they were taken out deliberately, they cannot be eaten on Shabbos. This and the different variations of the case are discussed. What if somebody makes his residence in an open field, and then on Shabbos, say, some non-Jewish people build a large partition around the area? He can travel 2,000 cubits within his Techum, and as beyond that is considered to be a private domain, he can throw things past that, as long as it's within the created partition. Some don't allow this out of concern that you'll walk after your thrown object, and they don't allow any carrying within the area at all, as it's like a partition that was breached along its length to your separate Techum domain, which is a separate area, so you can't carry in either. Others agree or disagree. Some allow pulling items, in this case from beyond the Techum, into it. Another ruling: if your Techum extends into a half courtyard, you can walk in that half of the courtyard, but no further, and there's no concern of you walking into the other half. Some would allow throwing things into a house without a front wall, that its roof ends right at the edge, as the roof acts as a noticeable marker and as a dividing line between the ends of your Techum. We discussed similar cases, such as the earlier mentioned being placed in a corral that you can only move 4 cubits within, as it wasn't established as your residence before Shabbos started, and there's disagreement if you can still throw things out of your area. Some say we follow the opinion that you can move around in such an area. Some only allow it in a ship. Everyone allows it on a ship. Some say because you can establish your residence in it before Shabbos. Some say because the ship is constantly moving, so you're constantly being pulled out of your 4-cubit area and having a new one reestablished. There's a practical difference between these two if the walls of the ship were lower than 10 handbreadths, or if you jump from ship to ship. The first opinion wouldn't allow it in those cases, while the second opinion would. The second opinion disagrees with the first, as he holds that the ship's walls exist to keep out water, not to act as an enclosure for the interior. The first opinion disagrees only in a case where the ship is not moving. These points are debated further on the difference between a stationary and moving ship and the different opinions. There is also a debate if the Techum laws apply above 10 handbreadths, which is the limit for several types of domains. This is relevant if you are traveling by jumping above 10 handbreadths or similar cases. Some say not, some say yes. It's debated with many proofs in both directions. One of the proofs is from a case where somebody swears that he will take a Nazirite oath that will be active on the day Mashiach comes. He can't drink wine any day, as Mashiach can come at any day. besides for on Shabbos and holidays, as there's a tradition that Mashiach will not come on those days. So this implies that Mashiach won't travel over a Techum boundary, not even literally over it by 10 handbreadths. So some disagree, saying that Eliyahu the prophet will not arrive to herald Mashiach's arrival the day before these days, but Mashiach could arrive, and it won't disrupt Shabbos or holidays, as when this occurs, everyone in the world will want to help the Jewish people with their Shabbos or holiday preparations. It's debated, but it's an unresolved question. This topic is discussed a bit further. It also brings back the story from the Mishnah with the sages on the ship, and says that the sage could see the port as he had a hollow tube of a sort that could help you see further. It also mentions some other uses for this measuring device, and how to measure other things by using your shadow and similar. Once there was a sage who accidentally stepped outside the Techum boundary, so they allowed him back in by creating a human partition around him. The validity of this action is debated, along with sources and comparison to doing such a thing to create a sukkah. There are some similar cases discussed. New Mishnah. There are exceptions to being able to leave your Techum boundary. For instance, you can travel to Jerusalem to testify about the new moon, or to save somebody's life. There was leniency granted for someone like this, that they get a new Techum of 2,000 cubits if they do this. If you traveled out of your Techum for one of these reasons, and then discovered that your services were no longer needed, you still have a new Techum. If you found out before you left your Techum, nothing changes. Also, all those leaving to rescue people may return to their places. That's going to be explained. The Gemara says that if he never left his Techum in this case doesn't reset to where he is. It's still in its original location. Some say that it means that if your new Techum overlaps your old one, you can go back to his original Techum with no changes. The disagreement is over if you hold that overlapping Techum domains combine or not. This is debated. The last statement of the Mishnah, that someone leaving to rescue someone may return to their place, some say this means that they can return to their place with their weapons. This is discussed. Some say there's distinction about returning from a battlefield based on whether you won and there's a remaining danger or not. There are some other miscellaneous laws of warfare on Shabbos mentioned, such as any attack on a border city can be defended as it's considered life-threatening, and we bring proof from verses. New Mishnah. If you're traveling and sit down as Shabbos starts and only after realize that you are within the Techum boundary of the city, some say you can't enter as you didn't intend to designate it before Shabbos, some say you can as you would have. One sage, Rabbi Tarfon, had this happen to him, and he entered the city. The Gemara says the incident by Rabbi Tarfon, and says that the disagreeing opinions would say that either he had consciously designated the city as his residence before Shabbos, or the study hall was still within his Techum. New Mishnah. Some say that if you fall asleep on a journey and Shabbos started, you have a Techum of 2,000 cubits from that location. Some say you only have 4 cubits. Some say the 4 cubits have him at the center. Others say you can have the 4 cubit border start wherever you want. Some say that once you choose your 4 cubits in a direction, you can't change it. Some say that if 2 people are restricted to 4 cubit areas and they overlap, they can put food in the middle and eat it. If there were 3 people with 4 cubits, and the middle one overlapped with the other 2, the middle one can bring food and eat with the other 2, and either 2 can eat with the middle one, but the outer 2 can't eat with each other. This is comparable to 3 courtyards that open into each other, and also to a public property. If both the outer ones have an Eruv to connect to the middle one, they can transfer between those, but not between the outer 2. The Gemara says that the opinion that a sleeping person doesn't get a Techum is because he needs conscious intent, and the opinion that says he does get one holds that in general, ownerless objects don't acquire a Shabbos residence, but a sleeping person does, as he also does when he's awake. The point on if ownerless objects require a residence and a fixed Techum is debated. There are proofs brought both ways. It says that we hold like the opinion that allots a sleeping individual a Techum of 2,000 cubits, like those who rule leniently by the laws of Eruvin as their only rabbinic. There's discussion on this topic. There's also discussion on the differences between Eruvs, Eruvei Techumin, and an Eruvei Chatzeros, which can be made without your consent for you, as an Eruvei Chatzeros only benefits you. There are other similar distinctions discussed. We also mentioned the law we follow in the cases of the Mishnah, and sources are discussed. They're debated further, along with a point on the Levirate marriage and remarriage only after 3 months of the ending of her prior marriage to avoid confusion in regards to pregnancy. The points on objects acquiring a Shabbos residence and a Techum are debated further. There's also a source that a non-Jewish person's items don't have a Techum boundary on Shabbos, and the resulting cases. Also, if 2 cities' boundaries end at a body of water with a net placed between, some require a proper solid boundary instead of a net to allow drawing that water, as water from the opposite side could have gotten mixed in. This case is discussed, and similar are mentioned, and it's all discussed further. We also discuss if the 4-cubit area that's given to an individual, if it's the standard cubit unit used in the temple, or we measure based on the arm of the person. So if he's tall, he'll have a larger area. We say it's according to the standard measurement, as some people are, say, abnormally small, and then they wouldn't have any space to do anything. In regards to the cases of the overlapping domains by the courtyard, some don't allow transfer between the outer courtyards to the middle one, as there are many people and somebody might mess up. By only 3 people with overlapping domains, then it's very unlikely that they'll mess up as they'll be paying attention, so it's allowed. The reason that all 3 courtyards don't merge is that there's an Eruv only placed in the outer courtyard, or that they were both in the middle courtyard but in different houses. This Eruv courtyard differentiation is discussed further. There are similar cases brought with a courtyard between 2 mavois and others, and what the opinions hold that you can't enter the mavois, and some differentiation if they're not accustomed to walk through one of them. There are other points brought, such as if somebody doesn't let others eat his part of the joint Eruv for a courtyard. Some say this disallows the Eruv, some say it doesn't matter, but he's just being stingy. Some say it's not valid if your Eruv portion is in a separate utensil, assuming it wasn't surplus that wouldn't fit. Both of these are necessary, as one has somebody who's being particular with his portion, and the other is where the different portions are physically separate. These are discussed, for instance, in opinion that the owner of a house that the Eruv is placed in doesn't need to contribute food, as everybody is now considered as living in that house, which he actually lives in, and further. The reason an Eruv, which combines courtyards, called an Eruvin Chatzeros, works is everybody purchases the house with a thing of monetary value, here food, and everyone shares joint ownership temporarily, and the courtyard is thereby made accessible to carry within on Shabbos for everybody. We also don't use money in case people forget that you can use food, and if that happens then the practice of Eruv could stop being used and be forgotten. Some say this Eruv works as it symbolically makes the house a place of residence for everybody. The practical difference between those two is if you use a utensil, which can be used to acquire something, but not to create a residence, or if you gave bread that's valued at less than a peruta, which was the smallest coin from those days, so it won't make an acquisition, but it could make you a resident. Or if a minor is used as an agent who cannot legally make an acquisition, but it could make you a resident. We try to bring a disproof for the logics, but we prove they're correct. Also, in regards to the original topic, we hold like the opinion that you can carry from the outer to the middle joint courtyard, and vice versa. New Mishnah. If you're traveling and Shabbos is about to fall, you can designate something to be your Eruvin Techum. Not a large landmark like a tree or a fence, but something specific, like its trunk, for instance. If it's 2,000 cubits away, he can then travel to it, and from there, 2,000 cubits to his house. If he doesn't know a landmark, you can just set his Techum at his location, which will get you 2,000 cubits in each direction. Some say this cubit perimeter is in a 2,000 cubit radius of a circle, some say it's in a square, so you can use the corners too. A poor person or a traveler without food can establish his Eruv with his person and not with food. Some say that's only for a poor person. Some say it's allowed for anybody, and you just use food, so that way you don't need to actually be at the location when Shabbos starts. The Gemara says that by the first case, if you try to make your Eruv by something too large, like a tree or a fence, it says that you've done nothing. Some say this means that you don't have a Techum anywhere at all. Some say that means you have a Techum, but from somewhere beneath the tree. So if you're going north, it'd start measuring from the south side of the tree. Some say the reason for the first opinion, that it establishes nothing, is that your 4-cubit area is not defined. Some say it's because he's trying to establish every 4-cubit square underneath the tree as his domain simultaneously, which is not allowed. A practical difference would be where he said he should acquire a residence in 4 of 8 cubits. The first would say no, and the second, yes, as he's designating a single 4-cubit domain. The points are debated in how the logics would apply by animal tithes and similar principles. In regards to the earlier point about attempting to designate under a tree, but that not working as it's too large, that applies if the tree has 12 cubits beneath it. If less, it's permissible, as it's divided into a bit less than 3 sections of 4 cubits, and the middle 4 is definitely included at least a bit in each area. Some disagree, as used to say we define your residence by the center of the tree, so he'd only allow it by a less than 8-cubit tree, as no matter what, your 4-cubit portion is somewhere included. There are different proofs for each opinion. If you properly designate a tree as your residence, some say this only works if you're able to run and reach the tree before Shabbos starts. There's an incident mentioned which correlates to this. It also brings the biblical source for the notion of a 2,000 cubit limit on Shabbos, which is from a verse, as it says, sit each man in his place on Shabbos. That references the 4-cubit personal limit, and then let no man leave his place, referencing the 2,000 cubit limit of a Techum, 2,000 specifically, as there's a number of other correlations drawn listed here. The source is explained further, along with a point that seems to imply that the Techum is a square, not a circle. The points on a rich or poor person establishing their Eruv on their own person is also discussed. Some say the case is only of the poor person doing so, where he doesn't know of any landmark to set as his Eruv instead, and we bring proofs. This is discussed along with if you have 4 cubits in addition to your 2,000. We can't bring a proof, but that's what we hold like. New Mishnah. If you have 2 houses that are 4,000 cubits apart, so there's a Techum in between that allows people to travel between the houses, and you start traveling, but say your friend gets you to turn back, you can still travel between the houses if you want, but all the other townspeople cannot. This will be explained. Also, some say that if you're able to put an Eruv Techum somewhere, and you don't, you just verbally assign it, your Techum is only between that location and your current one. The Gemara explains that the difference between the person who can use the Techum and the townspeople who can't is that you're considered to be like a poor person who is traveling to his house, and you may establish your Eruv with verbal designation. Everybody else cannot. We bring sources and a related incident. When we said that if you verbally designate the Eruv, when you could actually set it, your Eruv is between. That's even where he definitely didn't establish a valid Eruv. New Mishnah. If you willfully exit the Techum, even a cubit past, you cannot re-enter. Some allow it if you're only 2 cubits past, but not 3. The Gemara says an opinion that if even 1 foot is outside the boundary, you can't bring it back in, as the verse says foot, singular. Others disagree. Some say you can, as the word foot there is read in plural. Others say that you can, as it goes by where most of your body is. The opinion that you can go 2 cubits out has a contradicting case, but that's where he's measuring his Techum, where it's precise, even if it ends in the middle of a cave. New Mishnah. If you don't make it to your Techum before Shabbos starts, even if you're a cubit away, you can't enter. Some allow it if you're even 15 cubits away, as they hold that the surveyors who delineate the city's Techum will make it smaller than it actually is. The Gemara explains that it's made smaller to provide a safeguard for people that accidentally wander a bit outside the Techum. And that's the end of chapter 4.